Well, after not doing any shows for the past couple of weeks, it is nice to be doing interviews again. We recently moved to a really nice neighborhood in Stockton, California. Some of you know I've been training in Aikido for the past couple of years, and I ended up not training during the move and afterward for about 2 months. And man, it was terrible. I missed training even for that short amount of time, but I got back into it full force, so I've been away from the show for a bit, but it's good to be back, both to Aikido training and to this show. Today's guest is Antonio Palo, chief instructor at Aikido Virginia Beach. As you'll hear in the interview coming up in a minute, he was inspired by Lenny Sly of Rogue Warriors Combative Concepts to start his own YouTube channel, and you may have watched his videos on the Iwama Warriors YouTube channel. The topic today is practical Aikido. There's a lot of misunderstandings, especially in the MMA circles, as to what Aikido is, and you see a lot of comments and some videos questioning the practicality of Aikido as a self-defense system. And Antonio got tired of hearing all that, so he created the Iwama Warriors Virginia Beach channel. And he's been making videos specifically on techniques that can be used to defend yourself from various attacks on the street. Okay? Him and Lenny Sly, they kind of show you the traditional ways of doing things, and then they show you street applicable versions of the techniques. So they explain that really well. Antonio's got a great channel he's been working on, and it's been evolving. It's been fun seeing that. We talk about traditional Aikido and his views on Aikido evolving. Aikido's founder, Morihei Ueshiba, his Aikido was comparatively different in his early years from his later days. So you see how it changed there. A lot of it could be due to the age thing. You can't move the same way, and maybe he altered those techniques to fit with that. But anyway, he spoke of Aikido evolving, and maybe the work of people like Antonio, and as well as Lenny Sly, Jaime Calderon, and others that are doing this work here. Maybe they're the beneficial mutation in the evolution, if you will. That'll help people see just how effective Aikido training can be. I'll try to provide, I do try to provide a range of views on Aikido training, and these guys have been getting a lot of attention lately with the work that they've been doing. If you agree with their views, or if you don't, go ahead and leave a comment below and tell me what you think. You're listening to the Edgar Ortega radio show. I interview people on topics that interest me. Aikido is one of them. Also do a lot of snake topics and reptiles. I don't know if you guys are into that, but if you are, listen to those videos. Listen to my interview with Lenny Sly, Jaime Calderon. Did an interview with Linda Holiday Sensei. She's out in Santa Cruz, and others. You can find those interviews in my Exploring Aikido series on the playlist there at the Edgar Ortega channel on YouTube. That's Edgar Ortega, one word. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel and share my interviews. Also, please find my show page on Facebook. Just search the Edgar Ortega Radio Show and follow that, as well as on Instagram. All right, we're going to talk Aikido today. Let's go now to my interview with Antonio Palo. All right, Antonio Palo is the chief instructor at Aikido Virginia Beach over there on the East Coast. He's also been serving active duty in the Navy for the past 14 years. You may have seen his videos on YouTube on the Iwama Warriors Aikido Virginia Beach channel, where he shares Aikido techniques for practical application. Antonio, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, no, it's been cool. I've been talking to a lot of Aikido people, a real varied group. Some are real calm and philosophical. Others are real, all about the techniques and getting people on the ground, I guess they could say. Tell those listening, introduce those listening who may not have seen your channel yet. Tell those listening about yourself, how you came into training in Aikido, and how you ended up as chief instructor at your dojo.
All right, well, I've been training a little over 4 years, and, I've always wanted to do martial arts, and, growing up in Western Pennsylvania, there really wasn't much. I mean, we had Taekwondo and Shotokan karate, but, I never really fell into any of that. And, I'd moved around a lot since I joined the Navy, and then I got stationed in Virginia. And I'm looking around and actually started doing pro wrestling here. And then I saw an article about The Undertaker, when he trained with Tom Collins and, going from wrestling to, Aikido. I'm like, all right, of course, I grew up, I saw, the Steven Seagal movies, everyone uses above the law. And, I remember as a kid watching that one, and I was kind of thinking about it, and, went back and watched it, before I started training. I'm like, you know what, this is, what I want to do. So, I wanted to get my son, he's 10 now, my son Indy, into martial arts as well, and I, wanted something, he could use and helps him focus. And we're looking around and found Aikido Virginia Beach. Met my first teacher, Scott Tomlin, and, he'd been training in it for over, 25 years. Go in there, start talking, and I was like, all right, well, hey, let's do this. And I got my son on there, and then he did his first class, and then I started, training, and then I continued training, in the kids class and adult class, and I was in there, 5-6 days a week for kids and adult classes. And just in there over and over again, and I'm like, I really like this. So then at the time, I was still on my ship down here, and then, I was on a shore duty, and I was like, okay, this is, perfect timing. So then once I got to my shore command, it really started picking up more and more and getting in the dojo and, just going balls to the wall with it. And, started progressing, through training and stuff like that. And then, my teacher, he's like, hey, I see a lot of promise in, what your technique is and everything like that. I'm like, well, thanks, I appreciate it. And my big push for Aikido really came with, I think it was a first Q. He was getting ready for his Yondan, and he had to go to California, and he was like, hey, you got great technique, we work well together with Ukemi, I want to take you out there. So I went out to California and did his Yondan demo with him, and I was like, this is pretty cool, Uh-huh. So then, we came back to Virginia Beach, and, shortly thereafter that, I tested for my Shodan.
No, where in California did you go?
We went out to, where is it? San Leandro, under Patricia Hendricks.
Okay.
So that was his first teacher. So, we got back, and I'd been to, some of her seminars out here on the East Coast. And, she came up to me while we were out there, and she's like, you got really great technique, and, what rank are you? And I'm like, well, I'm coming up from my Shodan sensei. And she goes, how long have you been training? It was like about 2 years. And she looks at my teacher, and she goes, I could see him, progressing to Shodan and continuing. I'm like, wow, coming from somebody like that, that's been training for over, 35, 40 years. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean
So
that's a relatively short time. Even now, you've been training. You said 4 years. So I mean, but you said you were in the dojo all the time. So it's that persistent training.
yeah,
I'm there early every chance I get, and so getting every ounce of training and practice in. So you can progress quite a bit even in that short time. And that's just 2 years in, and you were impressing people.
yeah. I mean, Scott Sensei, he would say, hey, people are going to come and go. You'll see. They come in and say, hey, how long does it take me to get my black belt? And it's like, when somebody asks that question, you got to tell them, it's all what you put into it.
Yeah.
It's not really how fast can I get there. It's how do I get myself to get there. And and he worked with me a lot, and I just kept pushing and pushing, and then um, here about 2 years ago, after I got my shodan and everything, he's like, hey, I'm looking to retire, from this and just move on to something. I've been doing it, and how would you feel about taking the dojo? I'm like,
Wow.
well, shit. I mean, here I am, active duty, and I'm just like, all right, well, let me talk to my wife about it. And she was there every day because our son was there.
Yeah.
And at the time, actually, it was right. Our daughter had just been born, so yeah, it was kind of crazy timing.
No, that's really
And
no, that's really cool. I mean, you went from training up really fast. You put a lot of work into it. Into I assume you own the dojo or you just kind of run it.
we own it now.
Yeah,
So
no, I mean at Shodan, you were offered it
yeah,
at Shodan. That's a pretty cool thing.
yeah.
Um, Now there are a lot of Aikido videos out there. So tell me what your goals are with the Iwama Warriors YouTube channel, and how it's a little bit different from, say, your traditional Aikido demos, which there are dozens and dozens of all over.
Well, so our whole goal with it is just like Lenny Sly, taking Aikido back. You know, funny thing how we really fell into doing the YouTube was I followed Lenny, when he started, and then I've seen back in about December, I seen a video that featured him, and it was a martial arts demo video, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen it. I mean, I think the thing's got like 30,000 views, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get a hold of this guy and see what happens. So I sent him a message on Facebook, and here about 20 minutes later, I get a reply from him. Sitting there just talking back and forth about Aikido, and we talked for probably back and forth on Messenger for a good 2 weeks, and then he's like, "You need to do a YouTube channel. You have the same mentality I have about Aikido, and you're sick and tired of seeing people call it, ballroom dancing." And it's true. That's our goal with our YouTube channel is there's so many people out there ready to bash Aikido. I mean, you got all these fucking videos out there with people going out of their way to show little excerpts of Aikido that are taking it out of context.
Yeah, or just bad examples.
What's that?
Or just bad examples of a technique, or just something
Yeah.
you and I wouldn't necessarily call Aikido.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And there was this one video that just pissed me off, and I shared it with Lenny. It was people dressed as Aikidoka. They did a formal bowing. There was like 6 of them wearing hakama. They did a formal bowing, and then they stand up, and they start doing damn dancing. I'm like, all right, this is ridiculous. And, I'm talking to Lenny. He's like, well, what are you going to do? I was like, well, I'm going to grow a pair of balls and do a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
He goes,
you and Lenny, you're talking about Lenny Sly, the Rogue Warriors channel on YouTube.
Yep.
I did an interview with him. It's really popular. You guys, you mentioned it earlier, the hashtag taking Aikido back. You guys both use that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you started to a little bit. So talk to me about what it means exactly, and what you're wanting to do with it. But explain what you're taking it back from. You mentioned people calling Aikido ballroom dancing. I assume you want to take Aikido back and own it as a legitimate martial art that can be used for practical defense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're taking it back from everybody who's done Aikido and they feel that just training in it is enough. They don't want to better it. They don't want it to progress. And they're content with it not being, legitimized in the eyes of, this world where everyone's all about MMA and BJJ.
Yeah.
And it's like, with our videos, we want to show some of the classroom applications. And anytime we post a video talking about the classroom, we're like, all right, now this is one setting. You take this and apply it on the streets, you have to change how you go about it. The dynamic of it has to change. But you can't go into the dojo with this, lollygagging attitude about, oh, hey, this is my normal Monday night thing to do. Go in there, say hi to my partner, say hi to the teacher, and go about your merry way. And, this is why people say Aikido doesn't work. This is why you have people like Dana White going out there saying it doesn't work, because it's how you practice. If you treat it like it's a hobby, if you're a damn hobbyist, then that's what you're going to get. If you're one of these, hey, I'll give you $1,000, let me take my black belt test, it's not going to work. That is one thing with our dojo. We don't want to be considered a black belt factory. There has to be some standard. And
they call it a muck dojo, typically.
What's that?
They call it the muck dojo, like McDonald's, where you can just be pay and then you get your black belt. Yeah.
And, I got mine relatively quick, but that wasn't my mentality. It was just my teacher felt I was ready. His teacher felt I was ready. And that's, how I got to where that is.
Yeah, talk about traditional Aikido just for a bit. I mean, a lot of times people see traditional Aikido and they don't necessarily understand that the two people aren't necessarily fighting. So, I mean, like they say, you mentioned it looks like dancing. Oftentimes people don't understand the difference between a demo and a genuine conflict or fight. So there's a big difference. Usually the two Aikido, they're not fighting. So first explain, why is it that in these videos it looks like these people are dancing in the demos, and then weave in there an explanation of the traditional philosophy of Aikido in relation to fighting?
So, with traditional Aikido, there are demos, like you'd said, and that's showing that both people can work together. The founder, O-Sensei, said, hey, I want love, peace, and harmony. The goal of Aikido, to better people, to better each other and make it grow. And when you train with your partner, you have respect for your partner, and you're not necessarily trying to outdo each other. And when you work together and you know the techniques and you know how to receive the technique and flow, you're finding harmony with each other and your technique. And, by working with each other like that and blending, we start with Tai no Hinko every single class. That's what, O-Sensei wanted. It's, blending with your partner and getting in tune with what your partner is doing. And then you get in that mindset, you forget about, all the bullshit that goes on outside of the dojo. And it works.
Yeah.
That's that love, peace, and harmony coming into it. My perspective of it, other people are going to think about it as, oh, well, love, peace, and harmony, you can't go out and defend yourself. To me, to Lenny, Sly, that's bullshit, That's not how we see it, and that's the problem with Aikido nowadays. Everyone gets stuck on, hey, we're going to practice it this way. We're not going to have too much intensity. We don't want to hurt our partner. Okay, that's fine. But you have to go in there and think, if I want to apply this, what do I need to do?
Yeah.
And you got to be able to have that switch, the warrior mindset of, well, if this happens out in town, am I prepared to handle it? Or am I going to get stuck up on, oh, well, love, peace, harmony, I am just going to get my ass handed to me? I mean, this day and age, there's a lot of people like that, but people aren't nice. The world isn't getting any better, and, conflicts do happen.
Yeah.
I mean, being with the Navy the past 14 years, I've seen a lot of that all around the world. And I've been a part of the boarding teams the last time I went on deployment. And it's based in Aikido of what our techniques are. And the first thing they tell us is, hey, you have to be able to have that switch going from everything's fine to, this is the real world.
Yeah, so it gets real serious then. You call it a switch. It's interesting. Now, still sticking with that flow. When we practice flow, we practice the movements around people. I mean, that's just a little part of it, and people are seeing it and thinking, oh, that's all of Aikido. It's just you guys dancing around, love, peace, and harmony, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it really does help you to move. I mean, it trains you to constantly keep moving. If you hold still for even just a second, you might get punched in the face, even if you're halfway through a technique or something. Did you ever play football?
No, I never played football.
Me neither, but I understand that a lot of times they have the players, they go to like ballet classes, right?
Yeah.
Have you heard that? Yeah. And what that does is, it teaches them to move, to flow, around that. And if you practice with an Aikido practitioner, they'll practice the movements, and basically it's really smooth transitions from one position to another. I mean, a guy might turn around to do a spinning kick, and you might end up behind him. He didn't know where you were, and then you plop him down with a Iwama version or something like that. So it's really interesting. It helps you move, and it's a big part of it. And if people don't understand that, it might look a little silly to them, or if they're doing Aikido Mai or something like that. Now, are the techniques you show in your videos, are those traditional Iwama-style techniques, or would you say, you talked about the switch, would you say they're modified for practical application, or is it just the intensity of how you work it?
It's actually a little bit of both there. We show some videos where it's just traditional. This is a classroom. But when we demonstrate it, we start slow, show progression, and it gets, to that intensity level. And then we take it and, we find, how can we apply this practically? Now, the technique is still Aikido-based. Aikido has so many different styles out there, but people seem to be afraid to step outside of, say, hey, I'm Aikikai, you're Iwama, you're Takimusu. People have that fear of stepping outside of that comfort zone. And, what my teacher now, Pat Hendricks Sensei, said is, you have great technique, you have a passion for this, I want to see you succeed. And you need to make Aikido yours. You've got to find a way to do that. And, getting in touch with Lenny Sly was perfect. I saw what he was doing, we talked, and I'm like, okay, Aikido is vast. It's not just inside this black and white book of what I can and can't do. And that's what we're taking. We're taking traditional, and then we find a way to make it work on, applying, an Arimi Nage on the street. Arimi Nage has changed so much over the years from what O-sensei through Saito, through Hitahiro, it's changed a lot, because if we would practice Arimi Nage how it was originally intended, we'd run out of damn training partners. And, watching old videos like that, talking to Mark Larson Sensei, who trained under Saito Sensei longer than anybody. And he's like, this is what a Riminage in, I want to say, the end of February. And we were talking, and he's like, this is a Riminage. And then this is also a Riminage, and it's a different dynamic of it.
Yeah.
So what we're doing in our videos is that, we'll show you, hey, this is what traditional Riminage might look like. But then, hey, you don't have to enter in this way. You can find a different way to enter in, and you still do, instead of stepping through the attacker within a Riminage, you can get that Riminage and you can tenkan, turn around, and you can modify it into almost a Koshinage where they're going over your hip or your leg. And it's still a Riminage, just a different dynamic.
Yeah, it's a difference between the typical people see almost looks like a clothesline, or when you spin around behind them and you kind of shove them on the shoulders and they kind of go off balance there. The Riminage is still there, the principle's there. Now, I noticed in a recent video, I think it was on how to escape from a standing headlock you just did. And there you avoided techniques that would, there's lots of standing headlock techniques. You look them up on YouTube, you'll find all sorts of things. You avoided techniques that would basically put you on the ground, and it's really interesting. You held that kind of Aikido style of it. I also have an interest in Gracie, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and typically from a standing headlock position, you'd control the attacker's other hand so you're not getting punched in the face, while he's got you in the headlock. And you'll see people executing a technique that ends up putting the attacker on the ground, but it also puts you on the ground. A lot of times they just sit back and you end up in this grappling situation. But you did something interesting, and to answer the standing headlock was very much within the principles of Aikido, and you actually went into Aikido technique once you got out of it. Tell me about the choices you have in a position like that or any other position you might be on the street, and deciding whether or not you want to end up on the ground with your opponent, or from that position why you'd rather keep standing.
So with that one, in the video, I was working with one of my senior students, OG, who's a prior Marine. And, we know they're the badasses of grappling. There's a video out there going around now, MMA versus the Marines. And
I think you shared that recently. I haven't looked at it yet, though.
I just seen it pop up in one of my feeds, and I was like, this is exactly why we chose to do the techniques we did. And before we filmed, him and I, OG, had gotten on the mat, and for about an hour, just, racking each other's brains of, hey, okay, you have this background in grappling from working with the Marines. I have this background from grappling with professional wrestling, and they're all based in different things. And I'm like, well, maybe you and I could end up in a grappling situation and be fine. But somebody on the street sees this, and they're like, well, that didn't work. And we're like, well, shit, what do I do? So we sat there and just went back and forth for about an hour of, okay, what can we do to not end up on the ground? And, of course, we watched other videos out there, and we're looking, and it's like, all right, well, that seems cool. You got one where the person, does a professional wrestling move where they're suplexing the attacker onto the back of their head. All right, great, cool. But do you have the strength to do that? Yeah. Do you understand the mechanics of it? The average person doesn't. There's a lot of people that are WWE, TNA guys out there that are fans of it, and you see videos out there all the time, but unless you've actually done that, it's a lot more complicated, right? You could end up on the back of your head, or, hey, guess what? The attacker held on and just choked your ass out. So he's like, all right, what if we go for the knee? And it's like, all right, well, we start reaching for the knee. That puts you in a bad position. What if they sprawl? What if they have a wrestling background or an MMA background? That just puts you in a bad position. And it's, everybody wears MMA shirts or martial arts shirts.
Yeah.
You can go to Walmart and buy one. So you don't know who is a martial artist, who's a fan, who's a hobbyist. Nobody walks around saying, hey guys, I'm a Aikidoka. I'm going to challenge you to a fight. This isn't old Japan, where you go and challenge people. You walk into their school and be like, I challenge your teacher. It doesn't happen like that. You don't walk on the street and be like, oh, you're dressed like that. You must be, you must do Taekwondo. I do Aikido. I want to challenge you. Most people who jump you on the street, from places I've been around the world, they're not trained.
No, most people aren't trained. No.
No. And they're probably just as scared as you are whenever they attack you, unless they're hopped up on some shit,
Usually you get some flailing arms or some weird headlock that they're not necessarily comfortable with or something.
Yeah. And, it's trial and error a lot of times, and that's kind of what we did before we filmed. And it's like we showed the different ways somebody could grab you in a standing side headlock.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, and you mentioned most people who grab you get in a fight, who pick a fight at a bar or whatever happens. I mean, it's really rare unless you're getting into situations like that all the time where that happens, but the person typically isn't trained. Now, a lot of times, I think you mentioned earlier, it's how you train, isn't it?
Exactly.
Let's take something people rarely criticize, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, very effective martial art. People end up on the ground. But a lot of times what happened early on is it ended up turning into, originally the Gracies wanted that to be purely self-defense, skill. But
exactly.
It turned into a sport where people are concentrating on points and stuff like that. And it turned into the point where they basically stopped training with strikes. And the guy on the street, if you're going to try to grapple him and you've never trained with strikes, you're going to be in for a surprise because, I mean, you could be hugging him and try to put him into a pretzel, but he's going to be punching you in the back of the neck, right?
Exactly.
So a lot of the schools, even in jiu-jitsu, I mean, they stopped doing that, and I think what it does, it might catch somebody off guard. Who like, oh, I've trained like this, but they, in the gym, they're not trying to punch me in the face at the same time. So, I mean, it is how you train. If you train for self-defense or if you train for sport, if you try sport jiu-jitsu on the street, it'll be less effective than if you train for self-defense. Could be said the same thing for Aikido, would you say?
I'd say that, yeah. Because, if you train just as a hobby or you train just,
or
say
just
it's something for you to do, it's just something to do, then, yeah, you're not going to be prepared on the street. Same way if your partner has that same mentality in the dojo. We're like, all right, I said earlier, hey, I'm just going to come through. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Hey, we're good. Wow. Well, when we train, there's a lot of us, we get comfortable with each other, and we'll train and be like, all right, hey, I want you to pull some crazy shit out of your ass whenever I go for a kodagayashi. All right, cool. And, sometimes that ends up on our videos. We'll go through one way before we film, block it out a little bit, and then we'll do something completely different. And sometimes you'll catch that look on both of our faces like, wow, that was kind of cool. But because when we film, when we train, we have that mindset of this could turn real any second I walk out that door.
Yeah.
And that's how we train.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, I mean, it's typically frowned upon for Aikido people to, quote-unquote, be sparring, just because of the philosophy of it. You won't see it. And in the dojo, we basically, you go with the movements that we're used to it, just so you train in technique. And then later, some places might train with some resistance. And I think it's that resistance that'll more prepare you to like, oh, I'm so used to, my uke just running along with me while I spin around. And if you start training with resistance and you follow that ki energy and turn it into something else as opposed to forcing it and trying to make it work, I think you get a lot out of that.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
When you're new or you're learning something different, you learn how to flow. Your partner doesn't really resist.
Yeah.
But then you start giving a little resistance. You don't want to start 100% resisting with somebody who's trying to figure it out, because, Mark Sensei would tell us a story that, when he was training in the dojo with Saito Sensei, they had a thing that said, you will not resist your partner to the point they cannot perform the technique. Mm-hmm. If you're doing it, you're not training. And they were not allowed to do that. They would, they would get it through, they would flow, and then there'd be a little resistance, then a little more, and then they would resist more, and if they couldn't get it, they would try again, maybe a different angle.
Yeah.
Aikido isn't set in stone that you have to hold your hand this way or you have to extend this way. It's about finding angles, making it work.
Yeah.
And I'm only 5'7", and people I train with, they're, 6'1" and up. They got quite a bit of size on me. I can't do, say, an Arimi Nage or an Ikkyo the same way with somebody my size to somebody who's, 6'2", 6'3", 250 plus. It wouldn't work. Yeah. Just like, say, Lenny Sly and I would do a technique together. He's a little bit taller, but he has more experience. I can't do the same technique the same way to him that I do in the dojo. I'd have to find a different dynamic about it. And that's great about going to seminars. You train with people from all over the world.
Yeah, not the same, not the same five guys.
Yeah, right? And, recently I went out to California for the California Aikido Association division meeting, and I trained with people from Santiago, Chile. And I met this one guy, Victor Gallardo, and we're about the same size, but he has a different style he learned of Aikido, and now he's starting to get into the Iwama style. And I tried to do a Sankyo to him while we were training. And he's like, okay, well, that works this way. But if I turn this way, he changed the direction of his hand, how are you going to find that angle to get the Sankyo? I'm looking at him like, I don't know. He goes, well, take your other hand and cut my hand towards your center, your free hand. I'm like, oh, wow. And it's still Sankyo, but a different way to look at it.
Yeah, no, it's great to train with different body types, different people. In the dojo, I try to go after, if I can, if there's big guys there, I try to go to them, because it's going to be a lot different than if you're training with, Aikido women and men trained together. So it's obviously different as if you're with a woman or a little guy or something. So it's good to kind of have that in your arsenal, that you have the experience, you've worked with those body types and things. Now,
definitely.
Now you're in the Navy, you mentioned a little bit earlier. I assume you've done some sort of training in the Navy. Does your Aikido help you with that? Does it translate? Does it help you improve on what they teach you? How's that go with your Navy?
It really does. So,
well, how's that? What kind of training do they do with you?
So whenever I started getting into looking at doing detainee ops and the visit, board, search, and seizure, where you're boarding foreign vessels, you work with people from everyone from the SEALs, the Marines, and they give you different close quarter combat skills. But then it all goes back to working the body, finding angles. And I talked to one of the instructors, like, hey, this seems really familiar. And is this, Aikido? And he goes, yeah. All of our instructors go through Aikido, and we have to find a way to simplify it and teach you guys in a matter of 2 months.
All right, you're saying the instructors at the Navy, they go through Aikido training?
The ones that we have for the visit board and search and seizure teams, they go through Aikido training.
Really?
So they can take it and teach, the sailors coming through that are going to be on these teams. You got about 2 months to teach these guys how to save their ass. And
I didn't realize they did Aikido. That's interesting.
It's a big thing right now because, depending on what you're doing, like when you do detainee ops, you work with a lot of the Marines, you work with the Army. So you get into techniques of more like the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where you have to think about if you're both on the ground. it's very possible in a prison situation. It's very possible if you're doing a convoy that it could happen where you're on the ground. It could get into that. And, so they train a different way. But then whenever you get into you're the one in the assertive position boarding with a team onto, a foreign vessel, and you might have to detain somebody. You might have to get to an altercation. But when you're wearing full gear, where you're wearing a helmet, you're wearing your ammo, you're wearing a tac vest, you're strapped down and you have a weapon, Aikido is one of those martial arts that translates right over, because our weapons that we do translate to our taijutsu and vice versa, especially with Iwama style. And, the weapons retention that we do, like the Jonage, where we attack, the uke, and we have to retain our weapon. And that translates over to things I did with the boarding teams when I was in school with them, is, okay, you're carrying an M16. Somebody grabs it. Here's a technique that they taught us in Aikido that would work with the barrel of your M16. And what they showed us at the time was you rotate it around and you get a Nikio.
Yeah.
Just like things you would do with Joe Dory or Joe Nage, just moving your body, find that angle and using your Joe to get Nikio on the attacker. And, the more I get into Aikido, the more I study, the more I train, I have a really big appreciation for what I learned. Now, they can't teach you everything in 2 months. And it just made me want to keep going. And that's, why I've continued to train. And when I go back to sea duty here in a couple months, I'm going to get right back into being on the boarding teams, and I'm going to put myself in that position of, hey guys, if you want to learn to progress, I can work with you and we can find different ways to make it work. Martial arts is not designed for one body type and one size. It wouldn't be popular. Everyone would think it's a hoax. And, Aikido's no different. And that's, going back to taking it back, is we want to legitimize it. We're not trying to prove we're better than anybody else.
Yeah,
we're just trying to hold our ground. It's kind of become like, hey, Aikido's kind of like Greek. Nobody speaks it. It's kind of a dead language. I refuse to let Aikido become a dead martial art and let it become stagnant and stay there.
A lot of people say it needs to evolve to stay alive.
It does. And it doesn't mean we get it, away from what Saito or O-sensei came up with. They tested it, and Saito sensei's Aikido is different at the beginning of his life to the end of his life. It's different from what O-sensei did from the beginning to the end. I mean, O-sensei's Aikido at the beginning was brutal, but he found a way to incorporate it to make it for everybody to be able to find a way to make it work.
All right. I think the roots of it were in Daitu Roi Aikijitsu, which is pretty rough.
Exactly. They're learning how to break people's bones.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we train that way all the time, like I said before, we wouldn't have a training partner. You
gotta take turns being uke. Your career will be short-lived.
Something my first teacher, Scott Sensei, would say is, there really isn't revenge in Aikido. It's just your turn.
It's just your turn now.
Somebody snaps a Nikio in there.
Depends how hard you crank the Sankyo on your next guy.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And if we would train like that all the time, like, since I've been chief instructor, I've had people come in. They've watched the class. They've had a different background in martial arts. Some MMA guys come in. It's pretty popular in Virginia Beach. They come in. They're like, oh, hey, I want to try out a class. And really, they're just in there to prove they have a bigger asshole than you do or something, And they want to come in and just resist everything. And, they're trying to do Aikido, and they just want to resist. And what if I do this? What if I do that? Well, then I'm not going to continue with Aikido. I was like, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, I'm going to apply this technique. Well, let me feel it. All right, so, you apply Nikio.
Yeah.
Something that's, immediate pain compliance. You don't just snap it in there, especially with somebody who's never trained. We condition our wrists. We condition each other. to be able to feel the technique and the effectiveness without having to go 100% and hurting somebody in the classroom. You know, and, you know, they resist it a little bit. You know, the people coming in trying to prove that they're better. And then it's like, okay, well, and then you just start talking to them. It's like when you tell your kid, oh, you know, you're pulling out a splinter or something, you distract your kid, and you rip it out, and they don't even notice it. Kind of the same mindset, you know.
Yeah, can you imagine? Can you imagine applying a Nikio, even a Sankyo, which is full force? I mean, I can't even. I'd feel bad even trying it on anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's where you get those jokes you see the old Steven Seagal films. But that's basically what he's doing when he's breaking their arms and things.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he's capable of. So, you know, you start talking to the guy, and he's distracted. And next thing you know, he's not prepared for a Nikio. You can put a quick Nikio in there. And, you know, when you've trained enough, you know how much force to use. And they're like, oh, shit, that hurts. And I'm like, well, it's like, what was that? It's like, that's exactly what I was just telling you about. Oh, wow, you know. Yeah. And, you know, I think Lenny has mentioned it before. That's you won't see Aikido in the MMA. Our martial art is designed to stop that fight. You know, it's going to end it right then and there if you apply a technique like Nikio or Sankyo or an Arimi Nage. I mean, if you've taken an Arimi Nage from somebody who understands Aikido like Mark Larson or Pat Hendricks, and, you know, you start out slow, you do it, okay, and then, boom, they hit you, you know, 75%, and it's like, wow. Yeah. If I did not know the ukemi for this, that would have knocked my ass out.
Yeah, I was going to say, the ukemi, even with it, you know, you're taking, it's not easy with that one, but somebody on the street, they're not going to know that ukemi or even expect it coming, so, I mean, it'll do damage. I mean, obviously, in Aikido, the spirit is to not injure your opponent or minimize injury to him, right? But I often bring up the point that, well, you know ukemi, right?
Yep.
You know how to fall. You know how to take and go with the energy if they're cranking your arm or something. Dude, in Nikio, you go down on the ground to soften it. But they might not know that. They may try to stand up, and you're going to end up, you know, hurting them. So there's kind of a balance there, isn't there?
There is.
Yeah,
and
depends how much you want to take care of your uke, I guess.
You always do. And then, you know, it goes into that mindset of the switch. You know, real world, somebody's attacking you. They want to cause bodily harm. They want something. They either want to prove a point, they want to hurt you. You know, it's me and my wife, and I got 2 kids. You know, my son trains in it, so I know he understands it. You know, my daughter, she's about to start training, so I have every bit of faith that my kids will have the understanding that they need to have that switch, and that's what I tell them. You know, my daughter's 3, and I tell her that, and she has that understanding. You know, my son's 10, and he understands it, and I was like, you know, but if I'm out in town and somebody comes after me or grabs my wife, my kids, it stops there. I'm not going to let that shit go. I'm sorry, but, you know, it comes to that point where, like Lenny will say, you have to be able to stop it. Don't give them a second chance. And, you know, we talked about a video we did, somebody attacking you with a weapon. We used a piece of wood we had. And we actually got somebody that commented. They said they're an Aikidoka, but anyone can troll your page and say whatever they want. The guy went out of the way to message me personally saying, hey, I like your videos, I've been watching them, but when you say, you know, you want to knock them out, or when you go for that pin you're doing, you know, you have that option to just shatter their elbow and end it right there, you might not want to tell people that. This is the guy talking, and so you might want to tell people, no, don't even thinking about it, because, you know, that could make you legally liable, and they could come back and sue you, and because you're instructing people to break other people's elbows. I was like, that's not what we said.
Yeah.
We said, you know, it's there. It depends on the situation. First of all, they're attacking you with a 2x4, a plank, something, a lead pipe.
They're not trying to take care of you.
Why the hell would I worry about if I break your elbow or if I knock your ass out?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll stop it. And I think, and Lenny has the same thought on it. It's love, peace, and harmony, yes. But that doesn't mean somebody swings a 2x4 at your head that you go up and try to hug them. Mm-hmm. No, you end that shit. It's about, at that point, it stops being about trying to protect them. But the love, peace, and harmony comes into being able to be at peace with yourself enough that you're not going to be like, oh my God, I just broke this guy's arm. I'm like the worst person in the world. No, it's, okay, I did what I had to do to stop them from hurting me, hurting my family, hurting somebody else. Yeah, that's where that mentality comes in. That's that switch.
And that's interesting. You mentioned the switch. That's an interesting way of putting it. Other people say, no, you got to train hard. You got to train hard because then you'll be ready for it. You can escalate. You start off slow and then you move up to a point. I've heard it said often that you can't fake violence. In that I don't really want to punch you in the face. I don't want to punch you as hard as I can, even if you told me to, right? So, it'd be hard. You said punch me in the face. I don't want to punch you in the face. Or I might punch you and I won't punch you as hard as I can. But the guy on the street, he doesn't care about punching you in the face. He have no problem with it. So it's like, how hard can you train, really? And then there's training at those certain speeds, or like you said, a switch. So some people say you got to train that hard. I don't think that's really...
It's, one of those things is all about your comfort and your level.
Yeah.
Too. Be able to trust your partner. If you work together a lot or somebody and you guys get comfortable training, you start out easy and then you progress and then you progress a little more.
Yeah, well, that's natural. Yeah.
And then you find that limit. Everybody has a limit. You can never train hard enough or for every situation that could possibly happen on the street. It's just not going to happen.
The switch,
but you can prepare yourself to be able to adapt to it.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. Yeah. Did you say earlier the Undertaker did Aikido?
He did.
Oh, man.
So, Tom Collins up in New York had written a story, and before Stan Prana had passed away, he had featured it a few times through the Aikido Journal. Being a huge wrestling fan growing up and then, getting into wrestling, I've done that shit for the last 8 years. And, I read that article a few times and I even shared it with a lot of my friends that are wrestlers. And they're like, wow, that's awesome. That explains, why he found it. He wanted to find it. He's a big guy. How can I protect myself? How can I protect the guy I'm working with? And how can I make this look legit?
That's interesting.
The guy was like 6'3", 6'5", walking across the rope. If you've never done it, it's not as easy as you think it would be. And, even my size, I was the kind of guy, I'm flying off the ropes like, Rey Mysterio knows Mexican wrestlers. That was my thing because I'm small.
Yeah.
But the first time you get up on that turnbuckle, the first time you get on the rope, even with your partner holding your arm, it's still, if you don't understand how to be grounded or to be balanced, I'm 5'7", and it was hard for me to, to get that at first. But now that I've trained in Aikido, I can hop up there after not being in a ring for 3 months and be fine with it because I understand how my body works. And take that for somebody like The Undertaker, who's, like 6'3" or 6'5", 300-plus pounds doing it and making it look simple. And, the article talks about he wanted to learn how to protect his body. He's been going and just recently, retired at WrestleMania, and he wanted to protect himself. Yeah. And you could see it progress through his career once he started learning Aikido, especially as an Aikidoka. You see how he evolved and see, how somebody that big took something, wanted to learn it, and applied it outside of just Aikido. Yeah. And he applied it to prolong his wrestling life.
No, I didn't intend to switch the subject there. I was just kind of thinking over in my head on the things I've learned. I learned from talking to you guys. It's lots of fun. So far I learned that The Undertaker did Aikido, and that they do Aikido training in the Navy. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't have known that an hour ago. It's really fun. You mentioned Iwama style. That's the training you've done your whole
Yes.
time, right? Okay.
I've trained outside of the my teacher Pat Sensei. She encourages, to train different styles, and I went up to DC with Clyde Takaguchi Sensei and trained Aikikai, which is different. Even different Iwama styles, like the California Aikido Association. We have different styles in there, and even with Iwama, you have different associations. People went to Japan at different points in time. People learned different things, and they adapted Aikido for them. And, my one friend, Bruce Williams, who we've been, working with for a seminar coming up, he's under the Takimushu Aikido Association. He's Iwama style, but his Iwama style is slightly different than mine because of his teacher.
Yeah.
People going and learning at different times picked up different things, or they saw Saito Sensei a later part of his life or an earlier part of his life, and
Right.
it's changed.
Yeah.
And he evolved.
You mentioned Saito Sensei. Those who don't know, he was a student of O Sensei, and I think he got up to ninth Dan. And so a lot of the styles from Aikido come from the students of O Sensei, the founder. And so you'll have Saito Sensei, Hikitsuchi Sensei, and others. And the lineages kind of go like that. And so that's why there's so many styles, even though some people say, oh, well, Aikido is Aikido. But, obviously they train differently a little bit, but all on the similar techniques and things.
Exactly. And, that's our big thing with why I reached out to Lenny Sly. I want to look at Aikido as a whole. And my friend Yvonne Sensei, she's been training in, Iwama style Aikido her whole time. And I was like, hey, I have an idea I want to do. I want to bring different styles together. What do you think? And she goes, I think it's great. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, awesome. And that's when the whole thing came up, and I pitched it to Lenny, and he's like, wow, that's awesome. Let's do it. And then we set a date, and, here we are a month out from it. And I'm getting people from Kentucky. I'm getting people from New York that have followed Lenny, that have been following us on YouTube on the Iwama Warriors. And they're like, hey, I like what you guys do. How do I come train at your seminar? So we send them information.
Yeah.
And since we've done YouTube, we're a little over 1,000 subscribers. I mean, a ways away from where we want to be, but we've only been doing it about 3 months. Recently, we've been getting phone calls and emails and people stopping by saying, I saw what you guys do. You guys come up in the searches for Aikido. I want Iwama style. I want to learn practical Aikido, or I just want self-defense.
Yeah.
And here we are. We've had more people stopping in the last couple weeks than we've had, in a long time. And it's becoming popular.
It'd be cool to get you guys out here in California to do everybody them instructors with the kind of same mindset. Like maybe get you and Lenny and other people out here to do a seminar. That'd be fun.
It would be. Like I said, I've had people saying, hey, what are the odds of you being able to come here or go there? And it's like, well, with the Navy, it's a possibility. And I've been making it a point, to make friends with people and to get in contact with people around places where I know I could possibly go over the next 3 years. And, I want to be able to spread what I've learned. I want to be able to open up doors that aren't there. Not just for myself, but, my teacher, Pat Sensei, for Lenny, most definitely, because, we would not be doing what we're doing and be progressing if it wasn't for, his push, him taking the time that he did. If you knew the countless hours we would spend on the phone or sending messages back and forth, it's just, you can't pay for that kind of thing. I guess you could, but you wouldn't get the same effect of somebody who actually gives a shit about the martial art. so many people want to bash him and say he's this, that, and the other. I call bullshit. He is the most passionate person I have met about Aikido outside of, my first couple of teachers.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think when I talked to him before we started recording, I think he talked to me for 20 minutes, and then we recorded for over an hour, and then I stopped recording, and he talked to me for another half an hour, and that was good. Now you guys have the hashtag takingaikidoback. Who came up with that?
That was all Lenny.
That was all Lenny.
100%.
Yeah.
And we started we changed it up a little bit, and he's like, hey, I saw your hashtag. I want you to use the same one. We're the only ones that are using that, and when people put it in, our shit's going to come up. I was like, are you sure? He goes, I wouldn't tell you to do it if I didn't want you to do it. What you're doing with your channel, I fully support, and I want to see you grow.
That's good.
Same thing with this seminar. He wants to see us progress and grow, and that's why he's helping out as much as he is.
Yeah, I want to talk to him again here soon. I know we've been trying to plan. I haven't done any interviews for a bit, so you're the first one I've done in a couple of weeks. So no, I'm glad to talk to you. I think I said maybe we'll talk 20 minutes. It's already been an hour, so we're having a good time here.
No, I appreciate it. I really appreciate. You want to do the interview.
Yeah, no, I like where you guys are going with it. A lot of people that come to do Aikido, you have a lot of traditional dojos. They're kind of stuck doing the same thing, and they might see less people coming into the dojo. What's going on? I think a lot of people, want to see kind of the martial artsy stuff, and if they don't necessarily see that, they want to do it for self-defense. I mean, typically you go do martial art for self-defense, and you want it to be practical. And with so much information out there, you type in Aikido, see somebody bashing it, they might get discouraged or something. So what you guys are doing is really good and kind of turning it back to that, a real martial way. I'll let you have the last word here in a bit. But first of all, where can people train if they want to train with you?
So we're in Virginia Beach, Virginia. We have our Facebook page, Aikido Virginia Beach, and it has all our information on there. They can send us a message. They can message my page, and they can, stop on by our Virginia Beach area and come train with us.
All right, yeah, that's very good. Did you give a website?
It's just we just have our Facebook. We found it's a lot better.
Oh yeah, and then you have to manage it too. Oh, that's good. Okay, I'll let you talk now. I'm gonna have you talk to the haters, okay? I'm gonna have you take. First of all, talk to them about why they see Aikido the way they do, and then tell them why they should reconsider Aikido as a legitimate self-defense system.
All right, so with as Lenny started calling them, is the damn internet trolls, and they sit there, in their mom's basement, keyboard commanding, searching for ways to make themselves feel better. Getting their little licks in left and right. It's easy to talk shit about somebody who's out there putting techniques out there, putting information out there, and just sitting there critiquing every damn thing. We've had a fair share of them. And we'll call them out every damn video, if they want us to. You guys want to sit there and run your mouth saying Aikido's this, that, the other is bullshit. It doesn't work. Open invitation to anybody, come train with us. Go train with Lenny Sly. Find an Aikido dojo. Walk in there. Tell the instructor, hey, I think it's bullshit. It doesn't work. Okay, here's a waiver. We're not being cocky. We're not being arrogant. We're just pushing back because this is a no bullshit martial art. And Lenny and I have that same mentality, and we're going to keep pushing back until Aikido gets, the recognition and the respect that all this other stuff out there has. We're not trying to prove we're better, so everyone wants to see us go against the BJJ, MMA, Tang Shudo. Okay, fine. But it's not going to be who's got a bigger dick. It's going to be, okay, let's, work together. Let's find a way to demonstrate. Let's find a way to show strengths of both styles.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you go train Aikido, but if you want to try it, give it a try. Instead of running your mouth behind a computer screen or on your smartphone in your mom and dad's basement.
I think the next hashtag should be hashtag here's the waiver, or whatever he said. That's a funny one. I Antonio Palo, chief instructor at Aikido Virginia Beach. Thank you so much for taking time out to talk Aikido with me.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the opportunity. And, I look forward to seeing some of these comments that we're going to see on the interview here.
Yeah, let's do it again sometime. I'll talk to Lenny, and we'll talk a few more times. That'd be fun.
Sounds good to me.
All right, thanks, Antonio. You have a good one.
All right, thank you.
That was a fun talk with Antonio Palo, chief instructor at Aikido of Virginia Beach. And you can find his videos at the Iwama Warriors VA Beach channel on YouTube. Be sure to check out his videos and subscribe. Also check out Rogue Warriors channel. That's Lenny Sly's YouTube channel. And you can search for Rogue Warriors, Lenny Sly, or Combative Concepts. That should get you there. Also, if you haven't already, listen to my video titled A Dangerous Man. That's my interview with Lenny Sly, a really popular one. As always, thank you for listening. You've been listening to the Edgar Ortega radio show. Check out my other Aikido videos in the Exploring Aikido playlist on my channel. Please subscribe to Edgar Ortega channel on YouTube, follow on Facebook and Instagram, and check back here for more interviews. Let me know what you thought of this interview, and leave a comment below, give it a thumbs up, and share it. Thanks again for listening. You've been listening to the Edgar Ortega radio show.